The Betcast Picks of the Week.
All right, guys. We are on to the Betcast segment of the show, and one last plug for the Go Big Redcast bets. If you haven't joined, join right now. It's going to be highly competitive all year long, and that is indicative of how the Betcast turned out last week with our best bets. Producer Skip, unfortunately, now 0 for 3 on the year. I'm sure he's doing quite well in all of his other bets, but whatever he picks is not hitting here. But
if his college pick'em is any indication, yeah, it's not doing well, Dave.
That's right. But Boomer, you easily took USC at 7.5 at Stanford. USC, I think it was up 41-14 at one point. Let Stanford get a couple late touchdowns, but had that game easily in hand. I sweat a little bit with Duke and Northwestern as they scored early and often. At least the Blue Devils did, but then they kind of went into a stalemate, and I took the under 57.5. And Rob, you didn't really sweat this one either. Air Force at 17.5, easily covering that against.
I was sweating it like the first 10 minutes of the game. I think it was only like 7-3.
Yeah, and then you weren't sweating it any longer. But Rob, what's your record now this year?
3-0.
3-0. It's impressive that your gut is 3-0. I'm quite impressed with that.
Hey, look at Dave. I've done a lot to lose this gut. Okay.
Well, I mean, you keep on winning with that gut because I don't think you're doing a lot of analytics.
I'm going to keep it. Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
I mean, yeah, I've never been one to overthink anything.
That's right. Well, keep it up, man, because you're making us look pretty smart here with our best bets. But Boomer and I are holding up our end at 2-1 on both, and so as long as Skip turns this thing around, if we were a betting syndicate, I think we'd end up being profitable, hopefully, for anybody who's following us through the course of the year. That's our goal, right? All right, guys. What do you want to talk about? What you're looking at this week?
Well, there's some interesting ones because if you just looked at it on paper and you didn't know what you're talking about, I think I got Notre Dame favored at 10.5 over Cal. Are we supposed to stick to Big Ten right now, or are we?
No, whatever.
You can jump on that one. The Big Ten's not a great slate. So.
And there's not. Yeah, they don't have like the greatest play outside of the Nebraska, Oklahoma, and again, I don't bet on Nebraska, so. That's an interesting one just because Cal is it's only a 10.5 point spread. It almost feels like that's a gimme for Notre Dame. The over-under is 41, but I mean, Notre Dame hasn't looked all that great either so far.
And Rob, are you aware that Notre Dame's starting quarterback, Travis Buckner, is out?
Yes, I am.
And they're 0-2.
Yes, I do know they're 0-2. That's why it's just kind of like you look at it and you think like 10, like that's what I'm saying. On paper, you look at it and you think, oh, that would be a really good bet. But thank you for bringing up the points that I was going to bring up that like 10.5 seems, iffy, and the over-under is 41. And it'll be questionable. Like I said, Cal is 2-0. I mean, I don't remember the last time Cal was 2-0 in anything.
Yep, that's Justin Wilcox. Yeah. So I think. Yeah, I would probably look at the under on this one. You have a Notre Dame team that's been struggling to score anyway, and now you have a backup quarterback. Cal's not an explosive offense either, and is defensive-minded. It's a really low number, but I could see an under 41 in that one.
Yeah, it's a scary 41 because, I mean, it really – all you got to do
it's no Iowa game where you feel like it's a gimme.
Right. Oh.
Boomer, what do you
Iowa jokes would be so much better this week.
There's a couple of games that – speaking of Iowa – the line on that, you can get it at Iowa -23 to -23.5.
Can they score that many points?
Well, I mean, if they get like 12 safeties and a couple of field goals, maybe. But that just seems like a heck of a lot. I mean, it's Nevada. I know that. But Nevada is usually not a world-beating type team. But gosh,
and they're worse than usual this year. We've talked about Nevada.
Yeah. I mean, Nevada's
every week so points.
Far. I mean, they're not – I mean, they've I'm just looking at Nevada. I mean, their talent. The teams they played haven't been good. It's New Mexico State, Texas State, and Incarnate Word, but they scored 23, 38, and 41. I mean, even if they average on the low end, that means Iowa has to score 40-something. I don't know if that's even physically possible for Iowa at this point. I mean, unless Brian Ferentz gets a few more cameos called his way.
Maybe they'll score like 4 defensive touchdowns.
Yeah,
Iowa's defense is much better than what Nevada's played. So I mean, I could see
it is, yeah, but I mean, you're still asking Iowa has to score somehow. I mean, and they haven't shown any capability of that at all so far this year, which is the tricky part. And, you know, if Nevada scores twice, that might be beyond Iowa's offense at this point to put that much up. And so I don't know. I'm gonna wait on that and see what the line is on Thursday. That's what I was thinking of. And then another one, Rob, you mentioned this, you know, when we were talking the other day, just Colorado is just god awful.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they've got Minnesota this week, who's looked really sharp in their first 2 games. And
Minnesota, I think, blanked them last year.
I'd probably
Minnesota beat the tar out of them.
Probably take the over 46.5 on this one, but that spread 27.5. I mean, that spreads like that scare me. Anything over a spread over 20 always scares me.
Yeah, I think the
personally as a better, like I just, you know, I mean,
27.5. It's under a key number, obviously, of 28.
28, yeah.
If you can get that still, I mean, I'd be pretty tempted to take that. It's on my list. I'm seeing we have a listener, Brian Viator, throwing up some suggestions. One of them that I agree with is the Kansas plus 9.5. It might be at 10.5 now versus Houston. Kansas 2-0. Who would have thought, guys, right? And the rare they were 13.5-point dogs last week versus West Virginia. They win by 13 in overtime. Double overtime, I believe. I mean, Lance Leipold might be the real deal there, and it seems like Kansas could potentially keep that within single digits. I don't know.
Did you mean to say the future Nebraska coach?
I'm not going to go that far, but he is a viable candidate, Rob.
He is definitely viable. I'm joking, Dave, just because it's exactly what I hate doing at this point. So,
all right. Anything else out there on the board, guys?
Well, another one Brian brought up, and I was thinking of writing again. They paid off nicely last week. USC, I think they were at minus 12 with Fresno. USC's putting up a lot of points. Their offense seems to be rolled pretty nicely, so that's another one I'm going to kind of keep an eye on. Well, so we may just go with them again this week.
If you want a good kick to the gut, the over under on the Georgia Southern University
that's right.
is on the UAB game is 54.5, and
what's the spread
actually
on it?
UAB is actually an 11.5-point favorite in that game.
Is there something we're missing on that?
I
was trying to figure that out.
A win against them. That's what we're missing, a win against them.
It will be intriguing to watch that. I mean, to your point, Boomer, I guess, just looking at our game, you'd think that would go over at least.
Yeah.
And it seems like Georgia Southern could be very competitive in that game. I don't know if they can keep this up. And it's very different to have a big shot at a Power 5 team and then have to go play a UAB in a completely different atmosphere. But
Georgia Southern is obviously a playoff team this year.
Certainly, of course, top 5 at least. So,
yeah. They're going to be the Cincinnati of this year.
A couple of them that are my potential ticket. Looking at the under 50 at San Diego State and Utah. Could see that San Diego State mucks up games and slows everything down. And I think Utah's pretty good, but I think they'll just be looking to try to win that by double digits and get out of town without much of an issue. So that could be interesting. I saw that Michigan State is a dog to Washington. Is that right, guys? You guys see that?
They are correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Michigan State looks pretty good. They haven't played anybody yet, but I don't know much about Kellen DeBoer and that Washington Huskies quite yet. But I guess I'm going to have to do a little research more on that one because that was surprising.
Yeah, it's 3.5-point spread on that one. Over unders 56.5. It's at Washington. I mean, is that why? Like, I have no idea because both these teams. I mean, Michigan State 2-0. You know, they're number 11 and they're a dog at Washington. I don't get it. You're right. Like, it's just
doesn't add up, right?
Yeah,
I think
it doesn't.
Up there.
Yeah, something. Is there somebody like a key player that's out that anyone knows about, or is there
that I don't know?
You know,
another one I thought
it's like a cigar won't light in the humid conditions of Seattle. I don't.
Yeah, or battle of teams I don't trust. You've got Purdue and Syracuse this week. It's basically a pick 'em. I mean, you get that minus one.
It's a night game. Starts at 5:30. You know, so plenty of. plenty of rest during the day. I don't know. Like, are they planning on like letting Michigan State go out to the bars the night before or something?
Rob, we had turned over to a different
I'm
game
so
already.
sorry.
Yeah, we're at Purdue Syracuse, Rob. So yeah.
Oh,
Different time
Syracuse.
zones, so we're all right.
Well.
Yeah.
So I'm rooting for Purdue, obviously, because it's a big win for the Big Ten West if Purdue can knock that off. And Syracuse looked pretty good against Louisville in the first game of the year. So that's interesting. A couple of Big Ten games, and maybe we'll get out of here. That also is intriguing. Indiana is favored by 6.5 versus Western Kentucky. I don't know if Indiana deserves to be favored against anybody, but sure, I guess I'll think about that one a little bit. And I lost my bet last week with Michigan. I took the over 50, and they were over 50. It was 42-0 at half versus Hawaii, but of course there's the backdoor cover, and Hawaii scores late. It's 56-10 instead of 56-3, and I lose that bet. But I may ride and just have a different approach. They're playing another horrible team. Michigan has like the easiest start to the season, and they're playing Connecticut, which is awful.
We talk about runways, and you could launch a couple 747s off of the start of the schedule. Yeah, this is
47.5. I think is the spread. I don't know about that, but the over is 57.5.
It's at 60 right now.
Now it's at 60. You could have got it earlier. You could have got it just yesterday at 57.5. And that pretty attractive. I got that actually.
And of course, to our betcasters, just so you know, we don't make our picks until Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening. Our best bets, I should say, until the numbers have pretty much settled down at that point. So, while we're talking about this now, just, keep an eye on the numbers here. Don't take our word for a lot of the things that we say now, because those numbers can change.
That was a good PSA, Rob. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Anything else on the board you want to talk about?
I will say the line has moved in the Nebraska-Oklahoma game a lot more towards Nebraska's favor from what it was.
It's 11. It's 11.
It's
right
11.5. You can get a 10.5 few sites at the moment.
Actually, on the pick center on our what do you call it? The chalk on ESPN actually has that at 11.
Mm-hmm.
Even 11. No, not 11.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And that changed while we were sitting here, actually, half a point. So they must be listening to the show and understand it's going to be a shootout. That's what it is.
Sure.
I just assume everyone listens, Dave. It's just,
they do. That's you don't need to assume that.
We are now official Huskers. We're now official Huskers media. I'm surprised we're not listening to the media guide.
Influence is the question.